Hey everyone, welcome to the Chilling Hour, where the stories never let you sleep. My name is Evan Mercer. I'm 34 years old, and to this day I can't look at the ocean without feeling that something beneath it is looking back at me. People think deep-sea horror is just superstition, born from sailors' tales and old American coastal folklore. But I lived it. I survived it. And the thing that haunts me most is knowing I wasn't supposed to. It happened 3 years ago, off the coast of Oregon, where the Pacific stretches into a cold, endless dark. I was working as a deckhand on a private research vessel called the Albatross. We weren't some massive government ship, just a crew of 7 trying to chart unusual seismic readings near the Cascadia subduction zone. The ocean there is restless, always humming, like it's breathing in slow, heavy lungs. On the morning it began, fog wrapped around the water like it was hiding something. Our equipment had been glitching since dawn. Depth sensors misreading, sonar spiking without reason, radio cutting in and out. Captain Ross, who'd worked the Pacific for nearly 30 years, muttered that he didn't like it. And when a man like him says that, you listen. By evening, the ocean had gone unnaturally still. No waves, no wind, just a flat, dark surface stretching forever. The sonar operator, Marie, frowned at the screen and said, "Something's down there." I leaned over her shoulder, expecting another malfunction. But the display wasn't glitching. Something massive sat beneath us. Too massive to make sense. "It's not moving," she whispered. "It's just there." Captain Ross ordered us to deploy a deep-sea camera. Normally, it took about 20 minutes to descend. This time, the feed stayed black for nearly an hour. Then a faint blue glow flickered across the screen. The entire crew leaned closer. The light pulsed. Then another light appeared beside it. Then another. Rows of pale, ghostly glows blinking in patterns, like eyes adjusting to the camera's presence. Except they were spaced too far apart, yards apart, stretching in an arc so large it made the hairs rise on the back of my neck. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. Marie shook her head. "There's nothing biologically known that big." Then something hit the camera cable. Hard. The whole vessel shook. A deep, metallic groan echoed through the hull. Captain Ross shouted for us to pull the equipment back up. But the camera didn't come back. The winch spun uselessly, cable severed. Then the lights on deck flickered and died for a moment. In that instant of darkness, I swear I heard something beneath us. Something like a whale's call, but deeper, older, filled with a kind of sorrow that made my bones feel cold. We tried to shrug it off, tried to convince ourselves it was an equipment malfunction, maybe a giant squid pulling on the line. But none of us slept that night. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps on deck. Thinking it was one of the crew, I followed the sound. The fog was so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead, but I saw a shape standing at the edge of the boat. "Hello?" I called out. The shape didn't move. A step closer, and my heart clenched. It was Marie, but her eyes were open too wide, unblinking, staring straight down into the water. Her lips moved like she was whispering something. I got close enough to hear. "It's calling," she murmured. "It wants us." I grabbed her arm. "Marie, you need to come inside." She didn't resist, but she didn't look at me either. Her gaze stayed fixed on the ocean. When I pulled her toward the cabin, she whispered, "Do you see them?" "See what?" "The lights," she breathed. "They're so beautiful." I looked down. The water below us pooled with faint blue glimmers, swirling, moving, gathering like a school of luminous fish. Except they weren't fish. They flowed together, forming shapes too fluid to be bodies, but too purposeful to be random. The lights rose toward the surface. I stumbled back, pulling Marie with me. Captain Ross came running, yelling for everyone to get away from the rail. The blue lights scattered instantly, vanishing like someone had turned off a switch. We locked Marie in the infirmary after she tried twice more to climb overboard. The next morning, everything got worse. The ocean wasn't still anymore. It was unnaturally calm, like a huge weight was disturbing the water from beneath. The depth sounder read bottomless depths where there shouldn't have been any. It was as if the seabed had disappeared. Then we heard the knocking, rhythmic, slow at first, a faint thunk, thunk, thunk from beneath the hull. The sound grew louder, stronger, like something enormous was tapping the underside of the ship with a deliberate, curious patience. Every one of us stood frozen. Then the tapping stopped. Silence. A second later, the ship slammed upward, throwing us across the deck. A massive wave of black water splashed over the bow, though the sea had been calm seconds before. I scrambled to my feet as the boat groaned like it was being twisted. Something was lifting us, something beneath the water. I ran to the starboard rail and felt my stomach lurch. Just under the surface, a shape, dark and wide, expanded outward. Not a single body, but many shapes merging, swirling, moving as one. Like a living storm, lights pulsed within it, dozens, maybe hundreds of those eerie blue orbs. Then one massive eye opened. Not human, not animal, something alien, something ancient. Big as a car tire, unblinking, glowing with that same blue phosphorescence. It was looking directly at me. A voice, not a sound, not a word, but a pressure, hit my mind like cold fire. Like it was speaking without language, asking without words. Come down. My chest tightened. I staggered back, gripping the deck rail so hard my knuckles turned white. Somehow I managed to yank my eyes away. And when I did, I heard a scream. Marie. She'd broken out of the infirmary. She ran across the deck, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "I'm coming, I hear you." Captain Ross tried to grab her, but he slipped on the wet deck. Marie reached the railing before anyone could stop her. She didn't jump. She was pulled. Her body lifted, dragged over the rail by nothing visible, as if the ocean reached up with unseen hands. She was gone before I could blink. The water swallowed her without even a splash. We were all screaming for the captain to start the engines. Get us the hell out. But the engine room was flooded. Half the equipment offline. Whatever was under us had disabled the ship. The water churned violently. Waves rocked the vessel from all directions, though no wind blew. The radio cut out, screeching with static. The bow sank lower as something tugged us downward. I grabbed a flare gun. I don't even remember deciding to. I stumbled to the rail and fired into the water. The flare lit the ocean in a burning red glow. And in that glow, I saw them. Hundreds of pale, human-like faces rising beneath the surface. Eyes glowing blue. Eyes that were once alive. Eyes that had drowned and had been claimed. The faces drifted upward, mouths opening in silent screams, reaching toward the boat. Their arms stretched out, long and fluid, dissolving into ribbons of light that wrapped around the hull. I screamed for Captain Ross. He grabbed an emergency axe and started hacking at the glowing tendrils forming along the rail. Each strike made a horrible wail echo through the water. But it wasn't enough. The ship tilted. Alarms blared. Several crew members were thrown overboard, and the water swallowed them instantly, pulling them downward like hands dragging prey into the dark. I grabbed onto the cabin doorway as the entire vessel lurched violently. The deck cracked. Metal snapped. The boat began to split. Captain Ross shoved me toward the lifeboat. "Go!" he roared. "What about you?" He didn't answer, because he was already being pulled toward the rail. He swung the axe desperately, but invisible force dragged him down. The last thing I heard from him was a gut-ripping scream before the ocean took him. I stumbled into the lifeboat, shaking uncontrollably. Somehow, some miracle, I managed to launch it just as the albatross began sliding beneath the surface. The glowing faces swarmed it, pulling it down, consuming it whole like a swarm of deep-sea phantoms. The water calmed instantly once the ship vanished. The lights faded. The ocean went still again. I drifted for hours alone, shivering, until a Coast Guard cutter found me half-conscious, raving about lights and the dead rising below. They said the albatross had simply malfunctioned and sank. Case closed. No bodies recovered. No wreckage. Nothing. Just me. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the sky is dark, I hear the tapping again. Soft at first. Thunk, thunk, like it's still searching. Still calling. Still waiting for me to come back. I never will. But I know one thing with a certainty that keeps me awake every night. What lives in the deep isn't just ancient. It isn't just alive. It remembers, and it never lets go. Story the end.
Story number 2.
My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent the last 3 years trying to convince myself that what happened beneath the Atlantic wasn't real. But every time I close my eyes, every time I hear flowing water, every time I feel the faintest pressure change in the air, it all comes back. I'm telling this now because I don't sleep anymore. And because I need someone to believe me before whatever followed me up from the deep finally decides to finish what it started. I grew up in Maine, Camden to be exact, where the sea is practically part of your bloodstream. My father was a fisherman. His father before him, and I spent more time on boats than I did riding a bike. The ocean felt like a friend, a guardian, something ancient and powerful, sure, but familiar, safe, even. But the thing about the sea is that it only pretends to be peaceful. Underneath, it's older than bones, older than language, older than anything humans were ever meant to touch. And for reasons I still don't understand, it chose to show me its true face. I was working as a commercial diver then, a contractor hired by private research companies or salvage crews. The job that ruined my life. Yeah, ruined, because what's left of my mind now was a salvage assignment off the coast of North Carolina. A research vessel, the Astor, had gone missing 2 months before. The Coast Guard found no debris, no oil slick, no emergency beacon, nothing. It vanished like it had been swallowed whole. When the company called us in, they said they detected something metallic roughly 300 feet down on sonar. They needed divers to confirm it. The pay was incredible. The risks, as always, were manageable, or so I believed. There were 4 of us, me, Porter, Silva, and our lead Marin, all experienced, all stupidly confident. On the first day, everything felt normal, the hum of the boat engines, the salty air, the sharp stink of the suits warming in the sun. But the ocean felt wrong. Not rough, not stormy, just quiet, dead quiet. Even the gulls didn't circle. We descended at dawn on the 3rd morning. Visibility wasn't great, about 20 feet, but our lights cut through the green gloom. I was breathing steadily, controlling the pressure in my ears, focusing on my job. Nothing unusual. Then we saw it, the dark edge of something massive in the silt. I remember Porter's voice crackling through comms. Contact. Could be the hull. We moved closer. It wasn't the Astor. That ship was maybe 70 feet long. This thing was easily 150, maybe more. Old. Too old. Covered in something that didn't look like just algae or coral, more like scar tissue. Silva shined his light over what we thought was a rusted section of outer plating. For a moment, it reflected like metal. Then it flexed, subtly, like something tensing beneath skin. "Did you see that?" Silva asked. "Could be currents," Marin said, but there were no currents. Not at that depth. Not that strong. The hull wasn't a hull. And I think that was the moment I first felt it. Something watching us from the dark. A pressure like being under a microscope. My breathing quickened. Marin told me to relax, but there was no relaxing. I felt like something in the blackness behind us was moving, and then my light caught something that still haunts me. A window. A circular porthole. From behind it, pressed against the glass from the inside, was a hand. Human. Pale. Dead. It drifted away when our beams hit it, like it had been waiting for us. Silva swore. Porter muttered, "Jesus Christ." Marin told us to hold position while she moved closer. I shouldn't have followed. God? I shouldn't have. The ship, if you can call it that, had no markings, no broken pieces, no signs of modern construction. It was smooth and strangely organic, like it had grown rather than been built. And the more we inspected, the more I felt like it wasn't something that sank. It was something that surfaced. We found what looked like an entry hatch. A perfect circle, slightly open, as if inviting us inside. The ocean is silent, but down there was a sound, a low, rhythmic vibration, like breathing. It wasn't the Astor, we knew that. But that's when Porter noticed something caught between 2 jagged plates, part of a wetsuit. A torn sleeve with the Astor's research patch. Whatever this thing was, the Astor had gotten close to it, and it had taken them. When Marin gave the order to go in, I wanted to refuse. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control my descent. But no one wanted to be the coward. Not in front of the others. Inside, the walls weren't metal. They were ribbed, pulsing slightly, almost warm. My light kept dimming, flickering like something was draining its power, or feeding on it. The corridor sloped downward into black nothingness. We couldn't see more than a few feet. That's when our comms began to crackle. "Mercer, do you hear?" A voice, soft, wet, not one of us. Then a second voice overlapped, and a third, whispering our names. I felt the walls expand and contract around us, like the whole structure was inhaling. Marin said we were pulling out, but before we could turn, something moved in the darkness below us. A shape, long, boneless, human and not human at the same time. Pale limbs drifting like jellyfish tentacles. Eyes, too many eyes, glimpsed in the flicker of my dying flashlight. It reached toward us with a hand that looked human except for its nails. Long, curved, and black as volcanic glass. Porter screamed first, his voice cut off. I turned my light just long enough to see him being dragged downward by something thicker than an arm, something eel-like and strong enough to bend metal. Silva backed into me, trembling. We need to go. We need to go now. But Marin wasn't moving. She was staring down the corridor like she was hypnotized. Do you hear them? She whispered. They're calling us. She removed her breathing regulator. I grabbed for her, but she leaned forward and exhaled, letting the ocean fill her lungs, smiling like she'd just been welcomed home. Then she drifted downward into the black. Silva turned and bolted. I followed him, our lights barely functioning, our limbs heavy with panic. But something came after us. I could feel it pressing the water behind me, hear the distant scrape of its body against the organic walls. We hit open water again, not even looking back, swimming blind toward the faint glow of the surface. Silva never made it. His line jerked, and I heard one last scream before the comms went dead. I reached the surface alone. The crew hauled me onto the deck, and I started screaming before I even realized it. I don't remember most of that part. I just remember the captain's face going pale when he saw what was tangled around my air hose, something like a translucent tendon, still twitching. The Coast Guard searched the site. They said there was nothing there. No anomaly, no wreckage, no bodies, not even the seafloor disturbance we'd originally detected. As if the thing had moved, back into deeper waters, back where it belonged. But it didn't leave me alone. Since that day, I've heard whispers in my shower drain, felt cold, slick fingers brush my feet when I swim, seen shapes under the surface whenever I stand on a pier at night. And last week, I woke up to the sound of water dripping. Except my faucet wasn't on. The water was coming from the ceiling. When I looked up, a pale hand pressed against the plaster from the inside, wet, slow, deliberate, before sliding away just like the one behind that porthole. I think it followed me. I think it knows my name. And I think it's waiting until I'm back near open water. Which I will be, eventually. Nobody escapes the ocean forever. If you're hearing this, please, just don't go diving where you're not meant to. Some things aren't wrecks. They're traps. Living traps. And the sea doesn't give back what it takes. Not really. Story the end.
Story number 3.
My name is Daniel Mercer, and I'm 32 years old. I'm recording this because I don't sleep anymore. I don't go near the coast. I don't even take baths. I shower with the drain wide open and the curtain half pulled back. You might think that sounds paranoid, but if you'd seen what I saw in the deep Atlantic, you wouldn't blame me. It started last summer when my cousin Ryan convinced me to join him on a deep-sea expedition off the coast of Maine. He worked for a small research outfit that partnered with marine labs to survey seabeds and unexplored trenches. I had just gone through a breakup and wanted any excuse to leave town. So when he told me there'd be overtime pay and actual adventure, I agreed. We joined a crew of 7 aboard the Sea Warden, a small research vessel that looked older than every one of us combined. Rust chewed at the rails. The deck creaked even when no one stepped on it. And whenever the wind changed direction, the whole ship moaned like someone whispering from beneath the hull. The first few days were uneventful. Just waves, gulls, and long stretches of ocean that made you feel like a speck of dust floating on eternity. But on the 4th night, everything shifted. We had reached a stretch of water local fishermen called the Hollows, named for a section of ocean floor that dropped suddenly, farther than anyone had properly measured. Locals didn't like talking about it. One captain, an older guy with sunken eyes, said, "Things go quiet down there, too quiet." I thought he meant fish, but he didn't clarify. I wish he had. That night, the air felt unnaturally still. The ocean wasn't calm, it was motionless, like it was holding its breath. The surface reflected the moon perfectly, not a ripple breaking it. One of the crew, a woman named Leah, leaned against the rail and said it reminded her of a mirror someone had stretched over a grave. None of us laughed. Sometime after midnight, Ryan woke me up. His face was pale, and his voice shook when he said, "You need to see this." We climbed onto the deck, and I immediately felt it. Cold. Not ocean cold. Graveyard cold. The whole ship seemed to radiate it. The others were gathered at the starboard side, staring into the water. The floodlights aimed straight downward, illuminating the drop. I followed their gaze, expecting fish or maybe an old wreck. Instead, I saw a face. Pale, bloated, eyes wide open. Just beneath the surface, staring up at us. I stumbled backward, thinking it was a corpse. But then it moved. Its eyes shifted, locking onto mine. The mouth opened slowly, impossibly wide, and something like a stream of bubbles escaped, except they weren't bubbles. They were shapes, twisting, flickering shapes, like ghostly eels made of fog. Then the face sank, vanishing into the black. No one spoke for a full minute. Then our captain snapped out of it and ordered everyone inside. The door slammed, and the crew argued about what we'd seen. Hypothermia hallucination, decomposed diver, reflection tricks. Ryan and I said nothing. We both knew what we saw wasn't human. We tried to sleep, but the Sea Warden began to shudder violently around 3 a.m. Not crashing against waves, being pushed. Something thudded against the hull, again and again, like fists pounding from below. The lights flickered. The air filled with a vibrating hum that settled into our bones. Leah screamed from the deck. When we reached her, she was pointing at the water, trembling violently. Dozens of pale faces now floated beneath the ship, just visible through the moving black. Men, women, children, expressionless and watching. They weren't bodies. They were awaiting. One by one, their mouths opened, releasing those same twisting, ghostly shapes that drifted upward like strands of glowing smoke. The shapes latched onto the hull and pulsed. The ship groaned, the metal warping like it was being squeezed. Then something rose from the trench. At first, it seemed like a mountain lifting itself upward, pushing water aside. But then I saw its outline, a massive, hunched shape made of darkness thicker than the sea around it. No details, just a silhouette with too many limbs and a head that stretched and folded like it didn't belong in our world. The faces in the water turned toward it like they were bowing. The thing leaned closer to the ship, and suddenly we all felt it. Not heard, felt. A voice inside our skulls. It wasn't speaking words. It was showing images. A town long ago swallowed by a storm. Fishermen pulled under by unseen hands. Children dragged from docks into the deep. Every person it consumed, every soul it dragged into blackness, was still alive down there, trapped, floating, waiting. Then the voice turned sharp and singular. Join. The deck pitched violently as the Sea Warden tilted. Water rushed over the bow. One of the crew, a young guy named Mark, lost his footing and slid screaming into the water. He disappeared instantly, pulled straight down. Not even a splash. Panic erupted. Ryan grabbed my arm, yelling to get to the radio, but when we reached the cabin, every instrument was dead. No power, no signals, all screens black like the ship had been erased from the world. The pounding on the hull intensified, and the metal beneath our feet bent inward. I could hear it, groans, cracking steel, and beneath that something else, whispering. Thousands of voices rising from the water, whispering in unison. Some begged, some cried, some repeated one word, below, below, below. The creature began to rise higher, water cascading off its shape. The pale faces lifted too, drifting upward like balloons of flesh. Ryan grabbed a flare gun and shot it at the thing. The flare hit its surface, fizzled, then was swallowed whole. The creature didn't react, not physically. But inside my head, its voice thundered with amusement. Another deep lurch. The ship tilted so far I thought it would capsize. Leah slipped, grabbed the railing, but one of the ghostly faces rose directly beneath her hand. It opened its mouth, releasing a tendril of glowing mist that wrapped her wrist. She screamed as she was yanked overboard. We didn't see her again. At that point, the captain did the only thing left. He ordered us to abandon ship. A stupid, suicidal idea, but staying wasn't an option. The Sea Warden was seconds from being pulled under. We launched a lifeboat, the kind meant for calm seas and daylight emergencies. Half of us made it inside. Ryan shoved me in first, then jumped in after. The captain cut the line, and the boat plummeted into the water. The creature immediately turned toward us. The ocean around it churned violently now, swirling like it was boiling. The faces rose again, forming a circle around the lifeboat. They stared up at us, their mouths stretching wider than anything human. One by one, they screamed. Not underwater muffled screams, but real screams, ripping through the air as if they were right beside us. The ocean rose, lifting the lifeboat dangerously high, like we were riding the crest of a living wave. The creature's massive silhouette reached toward us. But then a blinding beam cut across the water. Another vessel, bigger, faster. Its spotlight hit our lifeboat, and someone yelled through a megaphone. The creature recoiled, sinking rapidly. The pale faces plunged after it, vanishing into the trench. Within seconds, the sea went still. completely still. The other ship pulled us aboard. I don't know who they were. Government, private military, some organization that knew exactly what the hollows contained. They took statements, checked us for decompression issues, then told us we saw nothing. They said people drown all the time. Boats sink. The ocean plays tricks on the mind. But I know the truth. There were 7 of us that night. 3 survived. 2 of those 3 refused to talk. The captain, he didn't last more than a week before he took a rope to his own neck. That leaves me. I can still hear the whispers when I close my eyes. I can still feel the cold brushing against my legs whenever I shower. And sometimes, when the drain gurgles, it sounds like a voice. Not words, just breath. Waiting. Because the creature didn't just want us. It marked us. And one night, maybe soon, maybe years from now, the ocean is going to come for me. When it does, I won't scream. I already know the sound of drowning in the dark. Story the end.